Mr. President, last week I stood here and introduced a simple resolution calling on the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. But a Republican senator blocked it. In the weeks since, even more damning information has come out, and now we know exactly why Trump is bending over backwards to keep these files hidden. We know that Epstein was at Trump's wedding. We know that Epstein once called Trump his closest friend for 10 years. And we've seen that Trump wrote Epstein a birthday card and said, and I quote, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." And the real kicker, we learned yesterday that Trump is in the Epstein files, and he knows it. The truth is coming out, and the cover-up is crumbling.
What my colleague's resolution does is truly trying to tell the FBI and the DOJ how they can proceed in doing their job and how they can actually present the information. Basically saying that we want all that information to go through Congress. Well, I'm sure Congress has never once played politics with any information. I'm sure that this investigation will be handled much like other investigations into this administration that the Democrats have done over the last, 8 years. I'm sure this would be handled just like any other thing that they've tried to go after, like the baseless impeachments or the baseless special counsels or the unbelievable amount of charges they've tried to file against the president. I'm sure this would be handled the exact same way. What we're simply wanting to do here is give them cover.
And my request is very simple. The Senate should go on record supporting the release of the Epstein files. Any effort to block their release is simply a continued cover-up of our nation's elites. While I stand here on the Senate floor demanding answers, House Republicans have ran for the exit, ended their term early, skipping town early to avoid taking up any more discussion about Epstein and the files. They didn't just punt accountability, they literally fled Washington, D.C. While everyday Americans are struggling to afford their groceries and their health care, we have a president in the White House focused on protecting the most powerful men and women who preyed on children. This is who Donald Trump really is. He campaigns as a man of the people. When it comes down to it, he is a servant of the powerful and the elite. He built a movement claiming to fight those same elites, and now he is protecting them every way possible. And the American people are seeing right through it. They spent years listening to Trump promise that he was going to release the Epstein files, and now he is mocking them every day for even believing him and all his lies. But the American people are not stupid. They know something is off. They smell it. If Donald Trump really wants these files released, they'd be out already. Instead, he's orchestrating a cover-up, and he is not acting alone. The entire Republican Party, the FBI director, the intelligence community, and the Justice Department are backing him up to bury the truth. They're doing it because they're doing everything they can to keep the truth buried because they know who's in those documents, and they want to protect them and his friends. So today, I'm calling on my colleagues to stand with me and stand on the side of the American people, not the pedophile elites that they are trying to protect, and call on the Justice Department to release these files. It is that simple. If there's nothing to hide, then come out and prove it. As if in legislation, and notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent of the Committee on Judiciary be discharged from further consideration, and the Senate now proceed to consideration of S.R. 325. Further, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to consider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
The senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
I reserve the right to object. As we hear my colleague from Arizona use, I say, very liberal truths to what he was saying by not giving all the facts, I'd also propose a question: where was all this outrage over the last 4 years when Director Wray was over the FBI and Attorney General Garland was over the DOJ? He knows, I know, and all the Democrats know that if there was anything to do with President Trump, they would have happily released it. My Lord, you went after him for everything else you could possibly think of. Why wouldn't you possibly go after this? Well, it's because this is nothing but political theater. We know that. We know that what your resolution does is it doesn't actually have transparency, because we all want transparency. All of us want transparency. We want to know actually what happened. The American people want to know what's happened. But what this resolution does is it actually is a blurred line between the separation of powers. When we start dictating to the Department of Justice what they can and can't do, there's a clear separation of power. We're the legislative branch. That's what we do. We make laws. We can't dictate other branches on what they must and how they must do their job. Now, with that being said, I would simply ask the question, why now? Is it because their hatred towards President Trump? Because they want to do anything they can possibly do to distract what they might be hiding? Why wasn't this done the previous 4 years? What happened? They had the same files. This case wasn't new. So this resolution does absolutely nothing, and therefore I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona has the floor.
Mr. President, reserve the right to object. Sorry. Okay.
If you want to respond just in this moment, you can.
Actually, I should have the floor, right?
Sure. Mr. President, in response to the Senator for Oklahoma, the reason we are here and the reason why there is a request of this nature is because there is one and only one administration and one campaign that ran for more than 8 years that vilified DOJ employees that were consistently trying to do their best jobs, and then started a conspiracy theory that has affected hundreds of people across this country, a conspiracy theory that caused people to start doing shootings at pizza places, that accused other people and other politicians of being pedophiles, and then said and campaigned that if you elect me, I will release the Trump files. That was only one campaign, and that was the Trump campaign. So now, as he is in power, as he has gotten power, he has specifically said he would release his campaign. He had an attorney general that said, I have now the files on my desk right now, and I will be releasing it. And soon as we heard, first from Elon Musk, that Trump himself is in the files, and all of a sudden we started seeing the cover-up starting. First he wasn't, then he was, then it was created by somebody else, then it's coming after him. This is all because the president has to answer to the American public. Did you lie for those 8 years and put all these employees, all these innocent people at risk to cover up for your elite friends? Or is there something in the file you are trying to hide to protect your friends? Because this whole issue has been started because of only one person and one campaign has made this a campaign issue. That is why the American public is demanding this. That is why the Republican House of Representatives has fled Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. I have not heard of House of Representatives leaving Washington, D.C. since we had to get away from the redcoats. But that's what happened because this president wants to avoid accountability, and this president wants to continue to cover up for his elite friends. You get back.
Mr. President, we all want transparency and for credible information on the Epstein case to be made public so that the American people can decide. The Trump administration has already said they are committed to releasing all available files. Last week, President Trump directed AG Bondi to produce any and all permanent grand jury testimony in the Epstein case. The resolution, my colleague from Arizona's resolution, tells the FBI and the DOJ how to do their job. My resolution would echo the seriousness of the directive from the President and the DOJ to the courts and calls the immediately to unseal all materials. When combined with what our House colleagues have done, this resolution moves forward providing justice to the victims and transparency to the American people. Mr. President, as I said before, we want transparency. But the courts control the grand jury. The judges that oversee the courts control the grand jury. We, in this body, can have resolutions back and forth and suggest that it be done, but truthfully, the judges have to do it. AG Bondi and the president has both already called upon the judges to release this information. What my resolution is simply saying is we agree with the president, we agree with AG Bondi on the judges and calling upon the judges to release it. So as if in legislation session and notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 335, which is at the desk. Further, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motion to reconsider be considered and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona is recognized.
Mr. President, let me explain to the American people what just happened. My colleague from Oklahoma refused to join me in calling on the DOJ to release all the Epstein files. Instead, he offered his own resolution calling on the courts to unseal the records. When asked if we did both, which I am asking to do both, I want to call for transparency, and of course we could ask the Justice Department and the courts. He's also going to object. Republicans are demanding the courts be transparent, but aren't willing to ask the same thing of the Trump DOJ. This is the height of hypocrisy. They want to tell the courts to be transparent, but aren't willing for themselves to be transparent. This is for the second time in 1 week the Senate had the chance to demand transparency and stand up for the truth. Instead, my colleagues chose to protect, again, the powerful elites. If there's truly nothing to hide in those files, then what are they so afraid of? What are they hiding? Why the panic? Why the backpedaling? And why all the objections? Congress should work for the people, not the powerful elites, and definitely not for one man or one administration. Today's resolution should have made that clear. Therefore, I ask the consent that the consent request be modified such that my resolution, SR 325, be discharged from the Committee on the Judiciary. Further, that the Senate proceed to the en bloc consideration of SR 335 and SR 325, that the resolutions be agreed to, that the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to be reconsidered be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, all en bloc.
Is there objection to the modification?
I reserve the right to object.
Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
It's interesting that my colleague wants to continue talking about the elites, but the elites was the ones that actually covered up the last 4 years of the Biden administration. I mean, think about what happened during the Biden administration. They covered up, 1, for his cognitive behavior. 2, they covered up the Hunter Biden laptop. 3, they covered up the Russian gate and continue to cover up the Russian gate. And 4, they covered up the fact that an auto bin signed every one of his papers except one. Where was the cover-up? Where did the elites come from? Well, it's because of the pressure from the Biden administration that actually did put it on the elite, on all the social media outlets. It's interesting, when I started talking to social media's founders after President Trump was elected, they said, we feel like we can actually do our job again. Why? Because the DOJ wasn't threatening to sue them. The Biden administration wasn't threatening to blackmail them. But yet my colleague from Arizona is saying that we're covering up for the elites. Let's be honest. We know these files have been out there forever. I don't remember a single time the Biden administration called on these things to be released. And I definitely don't remember my colleague from Arizona calling on these files to be released. As I've said before, this is nothing more than political theater. Everybody sees it. The American people sees it. And what else can President Trump and AG Bondi do but call on the judges to release the information? We're simply going back and forth here saying the same thing. The difference between my resolution and my colleagues from Arizona's resolution is mine isn't blurring the boundaries between separation of power. Mine is simply calling upon the judges to release the information. What my colleague's resolution does is truly trying to tell the FBI and the DOJ how they can proceed in doing their job and how they can actually present the information. Basically saying that we want all that information to go through Congress. What we're simply wanting to do here is give them cover. So if my colleague from Arizona actually wants transparency, then he would drop his objection to my resolution and just simply have mine go through, and we can move forward with the transparency that maybe both of us actually want. So therefore, I object to combining them. I would ask my colleague once again to accept my resolution.
The objection is heard to the modification. Is there objection to the original request?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. Let's just understand
New
why
Mexico
we're
is
here.
recognized.
Let's
I'm sorry,
just say why we're here. The political theater was started more than 8 years ago. Political theater started just 5 months ago when the president said, after appointing his attorney general, that they're going to release the Epstein files. When the attorney general said, I have those files right here, I'm going to show them to you. And then all of a sudden, the shenanigans started. All of a sudden, the files are gone. They're not there. They're made up by somebody else. That's where this political theater is coming from. And the American public wants to know why. Why, after 8 years, this president promising that I will release the files, why, after 8 years, getting into the office and then appointing his attorney general and then directing his attorney general to go look for those Epstein files, and then that attorney general saying they're going to release Epstein files, and then poof, all of a sudden there's an issue. All of a sudden there's backpedaling. This is what stinks for the American public. This is what smells like an elite cover-up. That's what we're trying to get to. And if my good colleague from Oklahoma agreed with me, then we would do both, because that is what is demanded by the American public, because the first promise was made by this president that they were going to release the files. That is where it's political started. So with that, Mr. Chair, I object to the good senator from Oklahoma's motion, and I yield back.
The objection is heard. Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
In closing, I would just simply say, well, maybe my colleague from Arizona and I can work together if he wants to, and we can drop some of the stuff in his resolution. Maybe we can come up with a conclusion with my resolution, where I have concerns about yours, blurring the lines between the separation of powers, and at the same time wanting transparency. If we can both agree we want transparency, then we've worked together on several issues in the past. Let's sit down and try working this one out. With that, I yield back.